Hello, welcome back to the Tears of Fire podcast, a podcast where I go over the Last Dragon Chronicles by Chris DeLacy, and today we're going to be covering chapters 13 through 16 of the book The Fire Eternal. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had a safe flight in and hit no turbulence. With that, let's get into the episode. We're going to start off with chapter 13 being Gudrun. We pick back up this week with the perspective of Tam. We know that Groin had kind of hidden himself away, and he explained that the travel was kind of difficult. He had to be invisible and go into Narwhal Tusk mode to hide from both Xana and Tam. So that kind of answers my question from last week, is how this guy got there. The poetry reading, since Groin does have the ability to turn invisible, he was able to sneak into the bag. We get back into Tam's house, and Groin is hiding in the book bag still, but Tam has a cat himself by the name of Jazz. Apparently Jazz is just keen on supernatural or otherworldly presences as well. I know I brought this up a couple weeks ago, maybe even last week, that I believe children and animals are a little bit more susceptible to this, so this makes good sense. But Jazz is investigating Tam's bag. He can sense Groin in there. He's trying to flap around, but Tam just scoops him up and tells him that he's not going to find any cat food in there, and it's time for dinner. While Tam and Jazz are in the other room, distracted, Groin goes around the house and hides. He found where Gudrun is sitting, which is on a big speaker on the floor. I'm guessing kind of like a home entertainment system that Tam has. Back in the day, that would have been so cool. I had a couple friends that had a home theater and had speakers all around. And sometimes the sound got more, I'd say, distracting than anything when you're watching a movie. Especially if you're watching something crazy like a Marvel movie. Those movies will go from really quiet when characters are talking to each other, just having dialogue, to overbearing sounds when it comes to the fight scenes and explosions. So as cool as it would be to have one of those, I think it's a little overdone. Now we just have little sound bars that help the quality of sounds, but that's about it. Anyway, so Groin is sitting here in his camouflage, his invisible mode, and he's studying the dragon that Tam had bought from Xana a few weeks ago. Gudrun was his name, and he's trying to change his form. I knew that Groin could go invisible and go into Narwhal Tusk mode, but I had no clue that he could shape himself in the vision of other dragons. In the book, it did say that they have a lot of common ancestry, so it wasn't too difficult. And that brings up a lot of questions for me. What kind of ancestry do they have? They shouldn't have too much, because we know that the dragons and Gudrun were made by Liz, but we never got where Groin had come from. We just knew that he was the companion of Bergstrom and the Bear Thorn, since he was the shaman that were going back and forth. But I would like to know how Groin came to be, or who created him, or how old is he. We never got any of that information. During this time, though, Groin is caught off guard because there's a knock on the door, and a girl comes in to meet Tam. He gives her a insecure, it's described as insecure, kiss on the cheek, and they are kind of talking, going back and forth. The girl is introduced as Jody, and I'm getting the feeling that they might not be an official couple, but there's something going on, because she did tell Tam that he promised her a movie and a nice date. So, it's an interesting way of going about this, since Tam was essentially flirting and trying to get on Xana's good side by showing her poetry and catering to her likes, but not telling her anything about his life. And apparently there's also another woman. So again, I never liked the way that Tam was coming in, because I assumed that David was here, And now that Tam is lying on the front of him being a poetry instead of a journalist, which I guess he does have a poetry book published, so it's not a complete lie, but he's hiding his true intentions as well as what he's doing in his normal life. So uh, if there's going to be any relationship, nothing good is built off of lies right off the bat. So again, I'm in the feeling of screw Tam. We do get later into this chapter that he's a decent guy. Even Groin can tell that he doesn't get any malice feelings or ill intentions from Tam, just that he's trying to dig from some information. So as this chapter goes on, the cat Jazz is still interrupting him and almost outing him. Jody comes in to check on the cat and make sure everything is okay. At this point, Groin had hidden Gudrun. He flew over to the cat's bed because Gudrun was kind of heavy for him and he didn't want to break her. But he hid her under, I wasn't quite sure under something because it didn't say a couch and it didn't really say a basket or anything. But Groin had hid Gudrun so that he could pose as Gudrun himself and be replaced himself onto the speaker. With the cat going haywire, Jody finds the other dragon as well. She finds Gudrun under his little hiding place, and Groin gets nervous. She finds Groin as well, so she's looking at these two dragons. She gets confused because Tam had said that he only bought one. So she gets a suspicious feeling, thinking that Tam's lying to her. She decides to put one of the dragons back, and since one was hidden, she wrapped one up and took one of the dragons with her. Unfortunately, we got a little confused because she ends up taking Groin instead of Gudrun. During this time, though, Groin had seen a text message on the phone, and he saw that it was a reply from Lucy. And he was trying to send a message back to the Penny Kettle house. He says that it's hard to communicate through such a long distance, but if they focus, they can get through to the listening dragon. And as he's doing this is when he gets caught. So the message didn't get through, and the plan was kind of foiled. It's going to bring us to the end of that chapter. There's not too much to say. It does make me excited to get back into this point of view. I do wish that we got more than just one chapter with everybody. I have noticed that these chapters are getting longer. I think as the audience is growing with these books, the way that Chris Lacey is writing seems to be maturing as well. So we're getting a little bit longer chapters, but still it's one chapter per perspective. To be able to sit with one group and learn more would be nice. But we get a little bit more information going forward. But that's going to bring us into chapter 14, Arctic Ice Caps in the Presence of the Goddess Sedna. So we're back with the bears. And this one gets kind of crazy. So Sedna finally returns with the Eye of Gawain. Avril's confused because it takes quite a few days, and instead of doing anything, Ingvar just lays down and tells Avril to rest. When Sedna returns, there's a huge geyser of water like the first time, even though the first time she was summoned by Ingvar and the spirits of the Inuit kind of drumming their spiritual drums. There's no ceremony this time. To be fair, she's just completing a task that Ingvar / the Hunter of Omara had sent her for, to retrieve the Eye of Gawain. There's words exchanged between Avril and Ingvar, as well as Sedna. Sedna's upset because she hasn't immediately gotten the payment that she was promised, which were fingers, so that she could feel her beautiful hair once again. During this interaction, a huge murder of ravens came in. And for those who don't know, a group or a flock of ravens is actually called a murder. Have no clue. I'll do some research and have Editing Diego pop in with that. Editing Diego here, and I need to make a correction for myself, so please bear with me as you listen to the rest of the episode. I found out that a group of ravens is not called a murder. That is actually a group of crows. A group of ravens is called a conspiracy because of their cooperative nature and behaviors. So, yeah, let's just ignore that I said that, and please, like I said, bear with me as I say a murder of ravens at least 10 more times. Thank you. Editing Diego out. But yeah, so there's a murder of ravens coming, and pretty much start attacking the bears as well as Sedna. Sedna becomes scared. She's yelling and screeching that this is her husband come back. This is her husband coming back to take her. Ingvar then invokes the spirits of the Inuit again to help fight against them. But it's said that as Avril the bear, Ingvar, and the spirits are fighting for each crow that is slain, 6 more rise and take its place. I mean, that's kind of. I like the way that that's set up. It gives me Hydra feelings from back in Greek mythology. You cut off one head and 2 more shall take its place. So it's very hard to kill or to put an end to this threat completely. As this fight is going on, Sedna is increasingly getting more and more agitated and more nervous. After, I would say, about 10 minutes of fighting, is what's described in the book, the ravens come together and form a short man. It says about half the size of a normal, or the hunter of Omara. The man confronts Ingvar as well. He looks over at Sedna and throws down fingers at her, saying that he can return this as long as she returns as his wife. And Sedna almost takes it, but Ingvar stops her, telling her that these fingers are evil, and if she's to accept these fingers, she'll leave the ground and only be able to fly. This kind of scares Sedna, since she's obviously spent more than about 1,000 years just down below in the water, below the ice, and ruling over the sea animals. So she doesn't really want this. We can tell that Ingvar doesn't want this. I don't know if this would tip the balance between, or tip the power scale between the bears and the ravens slash sibyls and shamans. But once the raven man comes and confronts Ingvar as well, Ingvar starts posturing and walking in circles. Avril recognizes this as a tactic for polar bears when they start to scuffle between each other. They size each other up before they start fighting. And I mean, this is pretty common. You can see this in any kind of nature documentary if you watch bears, especially grizzly bears and polar bears. Polar bears are some of the most violent creatures just in the world. They're some of the only animals that actively hunt humans. And it's not necessarily just because we're humans. There's just so little food sources wherever there are polar bears, whether that's, in the north reaches of Canada, the Arctic itself, even there's some in Russia. There's just such a little food source that they're willing to eat anything that's alive. And they can smell for miles. I think they can smell for up to 20 miles. So if a bear catches your scent, you're pretty screwed. You got to make sure that you have somewhere safe to be. Cars aren't necessarily safe. There's been stories of polar bears ripping apart car doors and getting into people there as well, breaking down houses, or not houses, but breaking down doors to houses. There was even a guy a couple years ago who put himself in a sturdy glass box made of like bulletproof glass and left a couple of holes in there, and a polar bear came through and messed with him for about 24 hours just trying to get into the glass somehow to get to him specifically. It was kind of a well-documented video. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. I forget the name of it, but I might be able to have Editing Diego pop back in with that. But yeah, so we get this image or description of the polar bear and raven starting to size each other up, and Avril, the storyteller bear, sees that this is more of a distraction than anything. And right as the raven man is about to start attacking, the fighting bear, Kalar, shows up right in the nick of time, because Avril doesn't believe that they'll be able to win, especially with the way that ravens multiply through killing them. But when they're all congregated together in the form of a man, Kalar comes in and swipes one paw, pretty much gutting this dude. Says that the intestines and feathers are just spewed everywhere. The raven dies. He has one last action where Averill believes he's going to take out Kalar, so in one swift motion, Averill himself then just smashes his head and turns it into a juice, is what's described in the book. Kind of dark for a kid's book, but like I was saying, as we're getting older, the audience, so is this writing. It's kind of fun. I do appreciate it. Obviously, we're nowhere near like Games of Thrones level, but to see a little bit more violence and a little bit more description makes you want to read on further, or at least made me want to read on further. After the raven is gone, everything starts to calm down a little bit, but Sedna still wants her payment of fingers. Ingvar takes a second, and he drops the fingers into the ocean. He cracks a big old hole into the ice. Sedna exclaims no, and she asks how he plans to repay her. And Ingvar goes on to explain that there are 8 fingers and she's only missing 4. She asks that why he would say those fingers would turn her evil if he's just going to turn around and tell her to use those. And he explains to her that the fingers will float to the bottom of the ocean, but the 4 that were from her father will turn her evil. 4 will be good for her to use. The 4 that reach the bottom of the ocean first are the evil ones, so she'll be able to pick which ones are the right ones by watching keenly. During this entire interaction, the raven that is Guilana, still trapped in a block of ice, is watching the entire time. And she's scolding the other bears, both Kalar and Averill, saying that this is completely wrong. They cannot trust this bear because this bear then is turning into a different human. He goes into somebody who has lighter skin and extremely blue eyes, but still wrapped up in Inuit furs. Lana is screeching. She says this can't be true. This can't be him. How can he tell all of these lies? And the human is talking to the bears as well, and that this raven serves a purpose and he can't allow her to die quite yet. But when he changes form, he looks at the bears and tells them both that they can call him David. And all I can say is finally. I mean, I didn't think that we'd be missing David for this long. I'd say we're about a third of the way through book 4. And to get our first mention of David being alive is kind of crazy to me. But it's nice to know that he is going to be a part of the story again. I mean, I figured he would be, but now that he's physically here and able to affect the story. This does confuse Guilana, though, because she asks if this is Thorin, and he says sometimes, but he took his Alma. Guilana says that that's only possible if one has been touched through the presence or essence of a dragon. That brings us to the end of that chapter. I would love to take a step into Guilana's perspective and maybe get a chapter in her mind, go from a third person to first person, almost to see exactly what she's feeling and what she's thinking. Because so far, we've gotten good perspective on both Kalar and Averill. They don't necessarily want to trust Ingvar 100%, but they have both been saved by him and have pledged their life to him. And so they said that they'll serve him no matter what, but they want to know what purpose this will serve the bears. Alright, with that, let's get into chapter 15, Breakthrough. In this chapter, we go back to Wayward Crescent in the Penny Kettle household. David's return is felt throughout the entire house. There's a little ripple in what I would call the spiritual realm. It's not really a realm that people can travel to or to visit, but through meditation they can feel disturbances or changes in the universe. And obviously we have a character who's been meditating for a very long time and has very good practice, which is Arthur. The dragons can feel the ripple as well, really mostly just them. The listening dragon lets Liz know that there's something going on, but she can't quite pinpoint what or where or why. Liz just says that if it happens again, try to pinpoint it as soon as possible. And we pick up with Lucy upstairs. We know that she's writing an email out to Tam. Arthur comes knocking on the door, wishing to speak with her. And we get a quick description that she's a little nervous because she doesn't want to be caught, but she remembers that Arthur is blind and he can't see anything. You can see faint lights, but, nothing clearly. So she leaves the email up and allows Arthur to enter the room. They wish to talk, or he wishes to talk to her and ask her a favor. We do get that Arthur is holding Bonington, and in the previous chapters it said that when they're touching each other, they're commingling since they have leftover feigned presence in them. And you can see through Bonington's eyes. Obviously, this isn't known by the other characters, so Arthur is able to kind of keep his cards close to his chest. So as Arthur is talking to Lucy, he's simultaneously using Bonington to see what's on the computer. He just asked Lucy to send a text to Brother Bernard, which this makes me happy. I loved Brother Bernard in the last book in Brother Bernard quickly became one of my favorite characters while he was only in, I would say, the last, maybe 20 chapters, which in that book it sounds like a lot, but each chapter was only like 4 or 5 pages long, and we jumped around perspectives quite a lot. But Brother Bernard obviously came in contact with Grackle the dragon and was able to help reverse some of the thought processes of Hugo Abbott, or Abbott Hugo, and help the dragons in his own way. He also returned Arthur to Liz and Lucy at the end of the last book. Anyway, Lucy is confused by this, thinking that the monks didn't have any phone, but Arthur just says that Brother Bernard did. And through this text, he asks Lucy to say that their dreams have come to fruition and that the eye of the universe is opening. This is confusing to Lucy, not really confusing to us. My question was, is this eye of the universe also the eye of Gawain? Not too sure on that. Or if it's supposed to be the opening of the other realm once David comes through. Once this is done, though, Lucy decides to leave. I guess I should mention during this interaction, Golly Gosh comes rushing into the room. He says that he was headed up to the dragon's den, but he heard talking, so he came to investigate. Arthur asks permission to stay in Lucy's room to rest because he's not feeling too well, but he'll leave in a couple minutes. Lucy's making up excuses to get out of talking to Arthur because she feels a little guilty for talking to Tam. When Arthur asks if she's doing homework, she replies saying that she's just updating David's website. She does it once a month, and it's just that time. Arthur, obviously able to see what's going on through the eyes of Bonington, doesn't push the subject, but once Lucy leaves, she gets a pop-up notification. He's not able to see the email and decides not to go snooping because he feels that it would be a betrayal of her trust. But he does see the subject line, and it says R.E. David's parents. And this has been a long time question for me as well. We haven't really had mention of his parents, because when he moved in with Liz in book 1, he did it with the help of his friend's father, because he had a big old moving van. We've also never gotten an introduction or a visit by David's parents, period. So I'm almost starting to feel like he's part of Immaculate Conception as well. It's been a long time since I've read these, and I don't remember very much at all at this point. I know I keep saying that, but I just want to reiterate that it's all just very blurry in detail. I wish we could also get a perspective from Bonington's point of view. I know that Bonington himself wouldn't be able to communicate, but is the Fane still in him? I know that we just don't have any faith in Arthur himself, but they left lasting abilities in each other. So Anne Bonington still has the ability to transform into any cat, which is kind of crazy. He doesn't change size, but he can change into like a saber-toothed tiger, being the size of a house cat. He can change into a lynx, which is, smaller, but that's still a different type of cat than just a regular tabby house cat. But I would like to know what that interaction feels like between him and Arthur. Because on Arthur's side, he gets the benefit of seeing through Bonington's eyes, but I'm not sure the benefit that Bonington would get through Arthur. Alright, and that's going to take us into chapter 16, which is just titled North. And man, whenever we've been dealing with the Bears' perspectives, it's always been such a long, long chapter title. And I know titles don't mean anything to the story other than just letting you know kind of where we're at. But it was a nice relief. I didn't have to write quite as much. So we pick back up with David talking to the Bears and Guilana. Guilana is just absolutely angry, saying that she's not going to help any of these guys, period, whatsoever. And she's being her normal self, where she's yelling insults and slurs to these bears, calling them sealed breath, blubber brains, something about dogs I can't quite remember, but she's still just being a racist lady. And both Avril and Kalar are having to hold back from killing her, but David is constantly saying that they need her, that she's going to be the one leading them to exactly where they need to go. David then finally reveals to Guilana what Sedna had brought up. This excites Guilana and tells the bears to release her and to give her the eye, but if David gets a hold of it, that he's going to turn the world inside out. Avril takes a second and asks for an explanation on what's going on, because he knows the word dragon, but he doesn't trust humans or birds, so he wants to know before they continue. And David goes on to tell the story of Guinevere. It's a quick, shortened version, but he hits all the points, saying how Guinevere caught the tear, and the tear then became the ice caps. He asked Laurel to go into his memories and find her. Avril, my bad. And Avril is thinking back. He says that Guinevere's spirit is distant, but all over. He can feel her in the wind, he can feel her in the ice, he can feel her in the ocean, that she's a part of everything as well as this dragon. Guilana wants to know exactly where she's taking them, and David says that he wants to be led to the original point of the ice bears, as well as the last existing point of Gwaine, where the fire tear first originally touched the ocean to create the ice. That's where the dragon magic is going to be strongest and where they need to take the eye. And that brings us to the end of that chapter. I only have a couple of questions because I would like to know what exactly the plan is. What are they going to do with the eye? We've already had an opening to another world with the Fane and with Grockle. So are we going to be bringing Grockle back? Are we going to be bringing more dragons back? Are we even going to be opening a realm, or are we going to be releasing more power? David does go on to explain that dragons were molded in the eye of the earth by the goddess Gaia. In the center of the earth, there is a white fire, and we know that to be the core. They're just kind of explaining a little bit different, but the fire is wrapped around by clay and rocks, just like a dragon, where a dragon has part of the white fire eternal inside of them, and once they release that tear, they return back to clay. And I do like this explanation. I know we've talked about it shortly on how dragons could be real and not find any kind of remnants on them whatsoever. But I like to believe that since their bones would be hollow because of their need for flight, just like a bird, they wouldn't really fossilize They would go to high oxygenated places, which if you know anything about our natural world, I don't know if this world is exactly 1-to-1, but if you have a lot of oxygen, nothing is going to fossilize. That's why the best preserved fossils that we find are in big permafrost ice, tar pits, underneath a bunch of volcanic ash from where, if a volcano erupted and everything just, they call it the volcanic winter. There's absolutely no oxygen for at least a couple of years. And that's what they believe led to a big extinction, not the extinction of the dinosaurs. But there's a couple different ones, right? There's volcanoes, there's asteroids, there's famine, and even with asteroids and comets, if that's to hit the Earth, it's equivalent to at least 2 or 3 nukes going off at the same time, which would then cover the world in fire and debris as well. So, if dragons were to be real, I would think their final resting places would be somewhere high or very hard to get to, so we wouldn't be able to find those fossils, period. Which just makes me then wonder how is David going to continue to bring back this power? But I am happy that David is back. I am nervous for the first interaction between Xana and David, as well as David and his daughter Alexa. Does David even know that he has a daughter yet? I feel like if I was Xana, I would be quite upset that this guy's been out and about for years, trancing on the ice, without any form of communication, letting her know that he's live or watching over her, which I'm sure he is. I mean, who wouldn't, right? But, yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys going on the journey. I hope to see you guys back here next week. I hope you have a safe flight out and hit no turbulence.